Welcome to Chat with Matt, Conversations That Count, the podcast where real conversations meet real life. I'm your host, Natalie Keim, an entrepreneur, financial strategist, caregiver, and advocate for living fully. And this show dives into the stories and strategies that shape who we are and how we thrive. Let's jump into this week's money tip, which is set up a U fund right alongside your emergency fund. An emergency fund covers life's surprises like car repairs, medical bills, but a U fund covers the investment in you. Whether it's therapy sessions, parenting classes, coaching, or a babysitter just so you can breathe, parents who invest in their emotional regulation also raise kids who thrive financially and emotionally. So protect your peace and your pockets. Now, this week's episode, I am so excited about. As parents, we've all been there. The meltdown in the grocery store aisle, the stress after a long day, and that desperate thought, how do I keep it together so my kids don't lose it too? Today, we're talking with Kristen Cook, MD, who's going to show us and talk to us about how to manage our emotional regulation, which sets the tone for our kids' success. Kristen is a pediatrician with 15 years of clinical experience and a thriving medical practice. She is the author of the upcoming book, Parenting Redefined, a guide to understanding and nurturing your child to help them thrive. She hosts Mom Doc Talk with Dr. Kristen Cook. Let me try that one more time. She hosts Mom Doc Talk with Dr. Kristen Cook, a weekly parenting podcast. Most importantly, she's a wife to Chad and a mom to Mason and Savannah. Kristen, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled and I love this new format that you have going on.
Thank you. It's been so fun. I've gotten a ton of great feedback and I know that people are going to love this episode because, look, first of all, I can't wait to get your book and read it as a mom of a young adult. My son is 24 years old, but I'll be honest, I don't know how many times in therapy, conversations with friends and other places I've said, man, I wish I had the maturity as a parent than that I have now. But of course, we gain that maturity by being parents, by going through the experiences, right? And I only had one child. So I'm learning all these things alongside raising him. And there's not another one behind for me to maybe do it better. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I look at, and my son and I have really open conversations about the struggles we had because I was a single mom and all of those things. But I'm always looking to learn and find ways to help other people that are in the hands-on full-time everyday parenting process. And so that's why I think this conversation is going to be so important. It's why this topic was important for me to talk about with you because life today is crazy enough, let alone when we're going through challenges with our kids or in ourselves and still trying to show up well as parents. So I want to jump in though, because you gave me a couple of anecdotes about kind of your financial process growing up. And my favorite one I read was the one about your first job and how you saved money. So I want to ask you to just share that with the audience before we jump into all the other stuff.
Sure. So I have to give my parents a huge amount of credit. They were very insistent on teaching my brother and I about financial responsibility from a very, very young age. So when I started my first job, I was a shampoo girl at a local hair salon, making $5.25 an hour plus tips. And I would bring a homemade lunch every single shift. And I worked there for several years. And one day, one of the other shampoo girls was like, why do you always bring your lunch? We get tip money every time we work. Why don't you just go buy something? And we were a couple of Snickers around the room. And I thought, okay, I got this. I go, well, because I've kept track. And those lunches that you spend your tip money on, I've saved over $1,000 by not doing that. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And I know you said nobody ever gave you a hard time about that again.
Ever. In fact, some of the girls started bringing lunches from home.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
little things. And that kind of refers back to my
Mhm.
money tip, right? Create that you
Right.
fund. That you fund is you want to go out and get lunch once in a
Yeah.
while. But if you don't
Mhm.
save along the way, you're
Right.
always going to be trying to find those nickels and
Yeah.
dimes in
Mhm.
between the bills that you
Mhm.
have to pay every month to
Yeah.
even enjoy the small things,
Right.
right?
Well, and
So,
I love that tip because the U fund, my parents used to call it mad money.
mm,
Like, this is the money we're just gonna spend on things we want or things that, you know, we didn't necessarily budget for, but seem important now.
yeah. I love that. I love
Mhm.
that. What a great example that they set. And
Yeah.
you pass that on even to your coworkers, in defense of why you were doing things, or in response, I should say,
Right.
of why you were doing what they asked you about,
Mhm.
but you had an influence on them. And that's amazing. It's the
Yeah.
little things like that teach us tips and tricks
Right.
about money, about saving,
Mhm.
about all different areas of life that we grow
Mhm.
from. So I love that you
Yeah.
had that influence. Okay, so I want to really get into the meat of today's episode.
Mhm.
And I want to start. I'm going to, I always come in with some questions to ask, but of course, my goal is to just go where the conversation takes us, because I
Okay.
think if we follow it, then it's the message people need to hear. But I
Mhm.
do want to lead off with kind of that idea, parents, we hear as parents, and maybe you advise parents on this too, but to stay calm in situations with your kids, stay calm.
Mhm.
But what does that emotional regulation really look like in practice for adults, so that
Yeah.
we can then set that example for our children that they can practice as well? Like that idea of how does my initial reaction not be to just scream at my kid or haul him out of the store and spank him in the back of the car, or
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
So self-awareness is key. You need to recognize when you are starting to get upset and then have a pattern interrupter. Okay.
Mm,
I have this really cool exercise that I call duck on a pond that I have been practicing for years and I've taught to other families and they think it really works. It helps them stop yelling. It helps them stop and think before they do something.
mm,
So where duck on a pond came from, years and years ago, when my husband and I were first dating, we had some important function where we had to catch an airplane. Maybe a wedding. I don't remember what the actual situation was, but our flight keeps getting delayed, 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 delayed. There were weather issues. Then the flight was finally canceled. And it's like, I don't know, 9:30 at night. I'm tired. I've been in the airport all day. And I do something that I regret to this day. I lashed out at the staff and I was yelling, and what are you going to do about this? And how am I going to get to my destination? And I'm sweating and hot. And I look behind me and Chad is just standing there like smirking at me. And I go, how are you so calm with all of this going on? And he goes, duck on a pond, baby. I'm a duck on a pond. So if you think about it, as you watch a duck swim through a pond, they look so peaceful, so
mm.
serene. But if you look under the water, their legs are kicking furiously to try to get them where they want to go. And so that's where the duck on the pond mentality came from. So I encourage anybody who wants to work on emotional regulation to think of a phrase, an image, something that you can bring into your conscious awareness to remind you to not lose yourself. So
Mm,
mine just happens to be duck on a pond. My sister-in-law is puppies running through a park.
mm.
So the actual phrase or image doesn't matter, but it serves as a pattern interrupter to say, hang on, I'm really frustrated and I don't want to say something or do something that I'm going to regret. So I'm going to step back and take a few deep breaths. And
I
that's
love
worked
that.
really well for me and for, the other people that I've taught that technique to.
I love that, because as parents, we have the weight of the world on our shoulders, whether
Mhm.
you're married or have a partner that's there to support and help and fill in the gaps or carry the load at times, or you're a single parent.
Right.
You can have that bad day at work or lose that job,
Mhm.
or any kind of thing can be going on in the world. Or you could even be having a perfectly great day, and for whatever reason, your
Mhm.
your fuse is just short. And
Right.
it's so easy to snap and
Mhm.
just react. And I can think of a million examples raising my son.
Mhm.
The very first time that he ever cursed, he was probably 7 or 8 years old. And
Okay.
I was at a friend's. I was sitting in an end chair in the living room, and he was standing just to my right, on the side of the chair. And something happened on the TV, and he yelled out a curse word.
Mhm.
And I did not even think of it. My hand just went like this.
Yeah.
And I caught him. And of course, he's 7 or 8. He drops to the ground. He grabs his cheek. He's screaming and crying. And I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I just smacked him.
Yeah.
It was,
Mhm.
but it was one of those lessons
Mhm.
that was a catalyst to me being like, okay, because I wasn't that mom. It was just that
Right.
moment. It caught me so off guard out of
Right.
nowhere. And then
Right.
I felt horrible.
Mhm.
And then there were a million
Mhm.
other times when we were somewhere that I wanted him to fit in this mold, the
Mhm.
good, quiet, calm kid, like maybe at church. That's
Right.
probably a good example. At church or
Mhm.
someplace that's quiet, and he's bouncing off the walls,
Mhm.
and you just
Yeah.
snap and you're like, sit down and be quiet, or whatever the thing
Yeah.
might be.
Mhm.
Um, and like I said, my son and I talk about all those things. And there have been times I'm like, I remember one time we had a conversation. I said, I'm sorry for the times I wasn't the mom that uh,
Mhm.
that you maybe deserved in certain moments.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that I want to say to the people out there, and definitely have you respond to as well, is he's looked at me at all those times and he's like, you're the exact mom I needed and the exact mom I was supposed to have. And I
Mhm.
think that's an example of, gosh, my son sure has a lot of grace for me because, you know, I was hardcore sometimes. And I think
Yeah.
as a single parent, part of that came from I wanted to get it so perfect because it was all on my shoulders. But
Yeah.
because it was all on my shoulders, it was heavy and hard sometimes. But I love that idea of like, have that thing, whatever it is for you, that just kind of takes you to a place that allows you to take a breath
Mhm.
or to remind yourself that, yes, this situation maybe needs to be handled or addressed,
Mhm.
but just makes you pause long enough to handle and address it in a way that you can feel okay about later.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have friends who are screamers. And
Mhm.
I bring these things up to you,
Mhm.
Kristen, because you are a pediatrician. And so I'm sure you see these things, you even notice things out and about, right? Because
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what you do, right?
Mhm.
And so I think, is it the same thing for I think sometimes we're just innately the yelling parent, or maybe the spanking parent, or the grounding parent, or the timeout, whatever you want to call it, parent. It's kind of
Yeah.
your go-to for how you handle those.
Mhm.
Is it the same for all of those situations, to just kind of pause?
I think the majority, yes.
Okay.
Um, in my experience, parents either parent the way they were parented
Mm,
or the way that they were parented was traumatic, so they do everything the exact opposite.
mm,
And so for a lot of people that struggle with yelling, it's because their parents yelled.
yeah.
Kids learn through something called modeling, which is also called observational learning. The human brain doesn't fully develop until a person is about 25 years old. So kids can't think
Okay.
like adults, which is why they don't act like adults.
Yeah.
You can't tell a 5-year-old not to yell when you yell at them every day of their life.
Mm.
And by the way, everyone yells at some point. There is no such thing as perfect parenting, but it's about the overall experience that you can create for your child. So if 85%
Mm.
of the time you don't yell, but the rest you do, well, the great majority is them experiencing you not yell.
That's a good perspective.
Yeah,
It's, what are you doing the majority of the time?
correct. Mhm.
My mom was the "you wait till your dad gets home" when I was little.
Mhm.
And so we'd get sent to our rooms and we'd wait till our dad got home. He was
Yeah.
the punisher or the
Mhm.
disciplinarian, whatever you
Sure.
want to call him.
Yeah.
And so, we'd kind of cower in our rooms the closer it got to the time Dad was going to get home.
Mhm.
I will ironically say, though, that I would be so bored that I would pick up books and read. And to this day, I love reading. And I
Yeah.
honestly attribute that to probably the troublesome child that I was and how many times I got sent to my room. But I would sit there and I'd think, oh my gosh, Dad's going to be home. And then, of course, he'd get home and she'd tell him what happened. And you need to go spank them or you need to go have a talk with them.
Mhm.
And my dad would come in the room. And my dad was so much calmer. There were a couple of times I got the spanking, that's for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
But there were a couple of times he came in and he was just so calm. And he's like, look, your mom is really upset. And, she wants me to yell at you or she wants me to spank you. And this is where I think my dad was the opposite of how he was raised. He was raised,
Mhm.
his dad was an alcoholic, abusive, things like that.
Mhm.
And so he was like, so we're just going to have a conversation and
Mhm.
then we're going to wrap that up. We're
Yeah.
going to be better. We're going to do better going forward. And so
Mhm.
I'm grateful for that side from my dad for sure. But my brother and I, now my mom was, when we got older, my mom was, it was a tablespoon of hot sauce
Well,
or the wooden spoon.
oh,
And
yeah.
to this day, we joke about the wooden spoons because one New Year's Eve, we thought we were so smart. We couldn't have been, I don't know, maybe 7 and 10 or something
Mhm.
like that. We got this brilliant idea that when we went out to bang pots for New Year's Eve, we were only taking the wooden spoons and we were going to break them all, hitting the pots so hard, making noise at midnight. And so we did. And the next day, my mom drove to the store and came home with a whole bunch of new wooden spoons. And we're like, oh, man, there's more of them out there. And so to this day, we still joke about it. A couple of years ago, I got him a wooden spoon for his birthday. It was a
Uh-huh.
hand carved wooden spoon I found at
Yeah.
this booth at the fair. I literally bought it and sent it to him. And we joke about it still, even in front of our
Yeah.
mom. And
Yeah.
she's like, well, that's all she says. Well, and so it's kind of funny, but that's a really good point is we either recreate what we experienced or we
Mhm.
could go the complete opposite. But that leads me to another question. Now, obviously, depending on what we're modeling, if it was a healthy situation or an unhealthy situation, that can
Mhm.
clearly answer the question of is modeling the way you were raised always a good thing? But my question is really around when you go the opposite way,
Mhm.
is that more of, or maybe it applies to both, is recreating what you experienced growing up or flipping it the other way necessarily the right way to go?
No, not necessarily. Every situation is unique. Um, a lot of parents that experience a lot of physical discipline, so spanking, wooden spoons, that kind of thing, go the opposite, and they just wanna make the world a safe, happy place for their kids,
Mm,
which sounds really nice, but you're crippling them.
mm,
I used to have, an acquaintance that whenever her son did something questionable, she would be like, "Eh, it's Ethan's world, we're just living in it."
mm.
"No, your child is 6. It's not his world." So, it's not always best to go the complete opposite way.
So almost in those situations, you can be feeding the behavior to continue or even increase from a
Right.
negative perspective.
Mhm,
That makes sense.
mhm,
I think for me, I was probably most of the time, I really think I was pretty accommodating to a detriment. Now, there were consequences, and my son knew that,
mhm,
but I think I did the opposite in the sense that I said yes as much as I possibly could.
mhm,
And not that my parents said no out of a way to not give me the things I wanted. I realize now as an adult, it was out of necessity,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Our income level, we were middle income, mid blue collar family,
mhm.
I would say. My brother and I never went without, but we didn't have the name brands or things like
Right.
that until we got older and we could work and pay the difference for the fancy
Mhm.
stuff.
Right.
And so for my son, it was twofold. I think it was trying to provide for him. In all honesty, I was the one who wanted the divorce.
Mhm.
from his dad. I think there was a piece of me that was trying to make up for that in a
Mhm.
way that I can see now that maybe I didn't see back then. But I think also I struggled financially as a single mom,
Mhm.
going through a couple of layoffs and some things like that during probably a 4 or 5 year period of time.
Mhm.
And so when I rebuilt my career and I got myself to a really stable place financially, I was saying yes to everything
Mhm.
because I had had to say no.
Right.
And so in some sense that wasn't the best scenario either, right?
Right. Right.
Because I think, in spite of my parents having to say no, they taught us, hey, here's how you can get those things. As we
Sure.
got jobs when we could and we
Yeah.
paid for those. Me, I was no, and then I was yes. So
And see, to me, the more important thing rather than the yes or the no is why.
yeah.
And it's important to include the kids in those conversations. I'm sorry, sweetheart, we can't afford to buy you Air Jordans, but I promise you, you will have shoes that fit.
Yeah. That's a good point, is being able to have ooh, I'm glad you opened that door. Being able to have the conversations with your
Mhm.
kids that are age appropriate. You can give them the real answer,
Right.
but of course, take the time to make it age appropriate
Right. Right.
rather than just, screaming, we can't afford that. And they're
Right.
like, you know, what does that mean about me? And like, for me saying no and then saying yes, I can tell you that I can see the ways that that influenced my son
Mhm.
for the negative. And he's a great kid.
Mhm.
He's on his own. He's doing great things. He
Yeah.
has a job he loves, a girlfriend, a dog, all the things, right? And
Yeah.
he is a healthy, well-rounded human being. However, I did not model that save for the things you want.
Mhm.
And so one of the things I am still now teaching him as a young adult is budgeting,
Mhm.
thinking about where your money's going and those
Right.
things, because it was so scarce for a period of time, and then
Mhm.
it was so abundant for a period of time.
Mhm.
And so I never bridged that gap and kind of gave him that lesson. And I guess maybe
Yeah.
it's a little ironic that I'm in the financial world now and that's what I do for a living.
Mhm.
But I've been able to help him set up things that I didn't know about at his age.
Mhm.
But it's definitely still stepping in and filling those gaps now that he's an adult, that I think partially come from the way that I handled that when he
Yeah,
was
but
growing up.
I'm a firm believer in the great majority of people do the best they can with the knowledge they have at the time.
Yeah.
And so for parents to beat themselves up over similar situations, don't do it. You did the best that you could with the information you had at the time.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. I remember once bringing it up in a therapy session, and my therapist said, "Hold on. Didn't you tell me your son is a United States Marine?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Then I'm willing to bet that you did a pretty darn good job somewhere along the way."
Yep.
And that was a shift for me in thinking, and in this conversation, I'm bringing up some of the ways that I think maybe there were shortcomings for me as a parent, but that was a shift for me that I can name a million ways that I was an amazing parent.
Mhm.
And so to get back to where you open the door by saying, having the conversations, giving them the why so that they understand, I think does two things. One, it gives them that understanding. It makes them feel like they're a partner in maybe whatever's going on. You don't have to give them all the details, and that's where the age appropriate piece comes in. But it also, I think, makes them feel heard and answered, even though
Mhm.
the answer was not what they were looking for.
Right.
But it also opens the door for them to ask you other questions in the
Mhm.
future.
Mhm.
And that is one of the things that I'm the most proud of, that I would lay anything on the line and say it's the best thing that I ever did in raising my son. And it's that I told him, you can ask me anything at any time.
Mhm.
And believe me, that young man came home with some questions that knocked me off center. There were a
Mhm.
couple times I had to say, I'm going to give you an answer to that, but just give me a minute to think about it because some of
Mhm,
those questions I was like, I don't know how to answer that appropriately
mhm,
for an 8-year-old. And I had to go in the other
right,
room and sit and think for a minute. But what I found was, even though it took me a little time sometimes to get there, what I found was when I gave him an age appropriate answer, what I referenced already, he felt heard, he felt seen, he felt responded to. And when I did that, like sometimes they come up with some uncomfortable questions
oh, yeah,
about girls, about boys, about life, about why did you and dad get divorced, all of the things, right?
mhm,
Um, but if you can answer it in the age appropriate way that makes them feel like they were answered, it usually stops there. Now, it may resurface later when they're older and they can see other things. You can have different conversations, but to this day, I am the first phone call my son makes.
mhm,
Even as an active duty Marine serving 6,500 miles away for 3.5 years, I was the first phone call my son made,
mhm,
good or bad.
yeah.
So, do you, do you think that really leans into, for me, I feel like it did, but do you see that same thing as you're working with parents and kids? And yes, you're addressing medical concerns, but I'm sure you're addressing those behavioral things too, right? Because those are happening all the time. So do
Mhm,
you see that same kind of progression of when you find ways to show up for your kids, whether it's answering the question or whatever the thing might be, that
mhm,
that does help to kind of bridge that gap between parent and child and strengthen the relationship going
mhm.
forward?
Absolutely, absolutely, it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So
one
go ahead.
sorry. I think one of the most important things that a parent can learn to do is to try to view the world from their child's perspective
Mm,
and parent from that place.
that's really good advice. That's really good advice. Can you give me kind of an example of how maybe somebody could do that?
Yeah. So it does take a basic knowledge of neurocognitive development, psychosocial development, temperament. And those are all the things that I address in my book based on ages and kind of developmental patterns. But let me think of an example. So, a lot of parents in my medical practice get really, really concerned about picky eating,
Mm,
especially toddlers and preschoolers. They only want chicken nuggets. Last week, they would only eat peanut butter and jelly. Now they throw it on the floor. I don't know what to do. Well, to a toddler and a preschooler, new foods oftentimes are threatening. And when someone is threatened, what happens? Our brain instantly releases all of the chemical messengers that are responsible for the fight, flight, freeze response.
mm.
So, picky eating isn't a sign that a child is being defiant. It's just an expression of an overwhelmed brain. And most misbehavior in kids, especially younger ones, is simply an expression of an overwhelmed brain.
That's a great example because I remember, here's something funny. My son, as a toddler and a baby, when he was going into baby food,
Mhm,
his favorite things were the green vegetables.
mhm,
He does not eat green veg. Now he'll eat a salad,
mhm,
but as a baby, his number one favorite vegetable, peas. He will
mhm.
not eat them unless they are sugar snap peas still in the shell.
Sure.
He will not eat peas.
Mhm.
It's a texture thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but I also remember looking back as he was getting older, his, I don't know if you'd say maybe it's just their brain developing and being more open to trying new things. But
Mhm,
I remember as he was getting into maybe his early teen years, things that I used to make or add to a dinner plate for myself that are things that weren't his preferences when he
mhm,
was younger. All of a sudden he said, "Can I try a bite of that?"
mhm,
And I remember him coming home. He would go to Utah every summer to spend the summer with his dad. And I remember, I want to say he was maybe 14 or 15. He went there for the summer. When he came home, he said, "Hey, mom, will you take me to get sushi sometime?" And I'm like, For real, I love sushi,
Oh,
Kristen.
me too.
I love sushi.
Oh, yes.
I
Yes.
never in a million years would have ever thought that my son as a teenager would want to go get sushi.
Mhm.
And he said, yeah, I think it was one of his aunts took him for sushi while he was there for the summer, and he loved it. Now, when we went, it was mostly the cooked stuff.
Sure.
And then, of course, as he continued to get older, he tried other new things. But it is interesting. And is that common too? Because you talked about food preferences or food aversion when they're young. And it does make sense that that fight or flight, I don't know what to do with this, so get away from me.
Right.
Right. Or that
Right.
spit out reaction when they're really
Yes.
small, they just spit it out
Yep.
or make a weird face and
Mhm.
then won't open their mouth when you try to feed them
Mhm.
the next
Yeah.
spoonful.
Yeah.
But is it common that you'll see one, that shift, of course, into liking more things, that it's a natural progression and that's kind of
Mhm.
what you advise the parents. But then do you also
Yeah.
see things that maybe they liked when they were younger that they create aversions to as they get older? Is that also something typical?
Yeah. It can, I mean, the great majority of toddlers and preschoolers, even younger school age children, are picky. And
Hmm.
as they get older, they are more adventurous, more willing to try new things. My son actually loves, and I never, ever would have imagined this because he was the kid that wouldn't touch anything green.
Yeah.
He loves chicken Caesar salads, loves
Really?
them. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So
crazy.
it takes time for the brain to develop, be like, okay, maybe this isn't a threat. Maybe this is something we can check out.
Okay.
Oh,
Interesting.
hmm.
Well, good advice though, I think though, because there are a lot of parents that are trying to like, I don't know what to feed my kid. I want my kid to
Hmm.
eat healthy things.
Right.
My kid won't eat healthy
Right.
things. And so it's this
Yeah.
constant battle at dinner time, right?
Right. Right.
Or the you're going to sit there until you eat that and they end up
Yeah.
falling asleep on the table because they're just not going to eat it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
sometimes it's just maybe picking your battles, right?
Right.
Is the green vegetables the sword you want to fall on when there's so many other things you're going to have to navigate in that age range with your child?
Absolutely. Now, that doesn't mean going to the extreme and being completely permissive and buying them McDonald's every night for dinner.
Mhm.
There's a balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just made me think I have a friend that is so creative about getting the vegetables. No problem. She has 4 girls.
Mhm.
No problems getting the fruits into them at all, and they're very healthy, clean eaters.
Mhm.
But the green vegetables,
Mhm.
none of her girls. So she is so creative. She mixed them into smoothies. She
Mhm.
mixed them into like their healthy muffin mixes,
Mhm.
and they don't even know they're there.
Right. Yeah.
But
That's one of the techniques I talk about with my families too, is to try to hide the veggies.
yeah. But I don't think that I think there's so many things today in ways people do food and ways people, meal plan and do all of the things. And I think in a sense, there's a huge kind of shift into more of that healthy eating these days. It feels like, at least in the
Yeah.
circles that I run in. And
Yeah.
so, and then there's so many convenient ways to do it. Like my NutriBullet, that sucker's a
Mm.
lifesaver. I didn't
Mhm.
have one of those when my son was little, where
Right.
and for me, it wasn't pull the blender out, plug it in, find a way to mix this into the recipe.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it maybe is a little easier to do that, or just we're more creative than
Yeah.
we used to be back
Yeah.
then. We've evolved.
Yes, we have. Always a good thing. Always a good thing.
So let me then ask, what would your advice be to parents who feel like we kind of address that immediate reaction, taking a pause
Mhm.
before you do it? But in
Mhm.
general, when parents are feeling like I am running on empty, work was extra demanding today, or
Mhm.
maybe just juggling the kids and finding the patience and the right time, it has me drained today.
Mhm.
So I'm running on empty, but I still want to model a calm environment for my kids,
Mhm.
or I want to be able to show up well for my kids, whether that, they want game night, or I promised them that we'd do this tonight, but I just don't have the energy. How do you recommend parents kind of navigate through showing up for their kids in the best way and being a good example to their kids
Yeah.
in emotional regulation when
Yeah.
they don't feel like they have anything to give?
So The first thing that parents need to do is show up for themselves before they show up for the kids.
Mm.
You can't be the best parent if you are running on fumes. You've got to take the time to be a little self-reflective, ask yourself what you need. This is I find it easier for two-parent families because there are plenty of times when I've had a disaster of a day at work and I come home and there's dog poop on the floor and the socks are everywhere, and I just look at my husband and I go, "I need 10 minutes. I need 10 minutes by myself." And then I employ the strategies that I know help me calm down and get my mental space in a place where I can now be the best mom and wife I can be, and just knowing yourself and taking that time.
That's great advice. But I think even for, a single parent,
Mhm.
it could still come down to, like we said before, having the conversation
Right.
of, I know I promised you movie night tonight, or I know I promised you we'd play Monopoly. That was my son's thing. To this day, he's like, hey, mom, let's play Monopoly. I'm like, no, you have smoked me at Monopoly since you were 5 years old. It is the one game I don't want to play with him ever. He's ruthless.
Yeah.
But I know I promised this thing to you. It was a little bit crazy for mom at work today. Is it okay if I go sit in my room and read for 15 minutes so I can kind of disconnect from work and then we can get to playing the game, or I can get dinner made and then we can play the game? Is it that same kind of that communication factor can be a part of that for the
Yes.
single parents that don't
Yes.
have somebody to hand it off to?
Absolutely. And start those conversations before your child is young enough to actually understand them, because then that will become your pattern.
They'll be used to it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Correct. So, and the other thing too is don't necessarily ask for permission. Just say, we're going to have game night, but mommy needs 10 minutes to calm down first. Mommy needs to take a quick bath. Mommy needs explain what you need. And that will help teach your children to express their needs as well.
Ooh, that's really good. Write that down, everybody. When you express what you need, your children learn to express what they need. And that
Yeah.
can be so important, especially if
Mhm.
you're teaching them young, because I had a son and I don't feel like we had a lot of turmoil during the teenage years,
Mhm.
but the teenage years are hard. And I feel like they get harder every decade, every generation.
Mhm.
From listening to my friends, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I would have navigated that. I'm so grateful that wasn't a
Mhm.
thing when my son was going through those years. So you equip them with skills to better manage their way through the things they're going to face in the future, right? Especially
Yeah.
outside the home.
Yeah. And the same applies to emotions too. We don't want to hide our emotions from our kids. We want to express them, maybe explain why we're feeling that way, and then deal with them in a healthy manner. And that's how we teach our kids emotional regulation.
I love that. I love that. Okay. So let me ask you, how do you help your kids recognize what it is that's happening,
Mhm.
put the words to it? So
Mhm.
maybe it hasn't been something they've seen modeled in the home, or something new. They get into junior high. Let's go ahead and go to the junior high years, because
Okay.
I think no matter what generation of friends I've had or anybody, they talk about those junior high years, they were some else, right? And then
Mhm.
high school's its own thing, but it's that turmoil. There's so much emotional shift
Mhm.
from, I would say, for me, it was probably 11, 12 to probably 14
Mhm.
or 15. And maybe
Mhm.
the timing of when that hits in
Mhm.
today's world is a little bit different. But there's kind of that maybe 2 to 4 years that can be really rough as kids
Mhm.
transition into this next level of life, that preteen age.
Mhm.
So, how do you help them recognize when something's going on, put a name to it, and then manage all of those big, huge emotions that come with it? The things that kind of help them
Yeah.
build that resilience.
Yeah. So emotional regulation is a skill. So a young teenager is not going to be proficient in it. And they're still going to be prone at times to meltdowns.
Mm.
Back talk is a huge one, eye rolling, especially the girls. And it's about calling them out in a constructive way. So my son is 13 right now. Mason's 13. And he's a he's I just love this kid. I love my daughter just as much. He's typically a really chill kid,
Mhm.
except when it comes to football. And my husband is from Nebraska, so we never miss a Nebraska Cornhusker football game.
Mhm.
But it's not uncommon for Mason to lose his mind and scream at the TV. And that's okay, except when he starts saying derogatory things about the players or the other
Mm.
team. That's
Mm.
not okay. We don't turn to that level of disrespect in our house. We just don't do it.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of, how would you feel if somebody said that about you? How would you feel if somebody did that to you?
Yeah.
And again, those are conversations that you can start before your child has the mental capacity to answer those questions. So for a toddler, let's say you have a 2-year-old and they got mad and they hit their sibling because their sibling wasn't sharing a toy. You get down to their level and you say, hitting hurts. Hitting is not nice. I bet you would feel sad if your sister hit you. And just kind of almost role playing those situations for them,
Yeah.
that really sets the building blocks of developing the skill of emotional regulation.
That's important. I will say I feel like Mason is my spirit child. I also will find myself quickly spiraling. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, okay?
Mhm.
I will scream at the TV and sometimes at Jerry Jones.
Mhm.
Um, but I get what you're saying, that it's one thing to be emotional about the game and your team is
Mhm.
winning,
Mhm.
but it's that when for you it's getting personal,
Right.
you meaning the person who's reacting,
Mhm.
it's getting personal of where that player da 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 on the field, he's this or she's
Mhm.
that, whatever the sport is,
Right.
that it can. So I should probably work on not yelling at Jerry Jones as much specifically. But I get it. Sports, that was such a good example because as adults, and I am the girl that I love all the sports. I watch NASCAR. I absolutely love baseball. I
Mhm.
watch the NBA just during the playoffs. I watch March Madness. Anyway, all the things. I am a sports girl. Um, but you made me think that I probably need to tame it down. Even though I'm in my own house and I'm
Mhm.
not modeling for a child anymore. Sometimes we're all screaming at the TV, to be
Mhm.
honest with you. But
Mhm.
that's a really good perspective. But I want to take but before we kind of move, there's a fun question I have for you at the end, and then I want to
Okay.
talk about how people can find you, and I want you to tell us just a tad bit more about your book at that point
Okay.
too, because
Great.
like I said, I'm excited to get it, even though my son is 24 and grown.
Yeah.
I think I'm excited to read it and recommend it to my friends too, because I know just from having been around you, having been in a mastermind group with you, how
Mhm.
important it is for you to give people the resources, give
Mhm.
parents the resources to be the
Mhm.
best parents they can. But let me ask this side of the equation, because I see this kind of thing come up on social media in my community, in the
Mhm.
community groups that I live in, is when, as a parent, I'll use myself as an example. So if my son came home and was being bullied by a specific person, as my child's parent, how would you recommend I go about that? And that comes from the sense of the questions I'll see in the mom groups and things is like, should I call the other child's parent? Should I just keep quiet and try and just kind of coach my son on how he can navigate through those things? Now, for me, my son did get bullied, and this is what I told him, and you can also tell me if maybe it was the best thing or not. I told my son, here's my rule. If they start it, you have my permission to finish it, and I will back you up every single time. But if you start it, I will finish it.
Mhm.
Meaning, whatever consequence that we have established for different behaviors, that's
Mhm.
the consequence you're going to get. Not
Yes.
meaning that, if my son punched a kid, I was going to punch my son back. No,
Mhm.
absolutely not.
Right.
But, right. So that was always the context. And that came to adults in his life. He
Mhm.
struggled with some bullying from coaches and teachers in middle school. And he knew when mom was going to have his back and
Yep.
when mom wasn't, based on if
Mhm.
he started the issue in a classroom as well. So, how do you talk to parents about that? How
Yeah.
to handle a situation, or even if your kid is the one that's in the wrong and another parent comes to you?
Mhm. Yeah. So, by the way, we had the exact same perspective in our house. You don't start something, but you better finish it.
Yep.
Um, Bullying, it depends on the specific situation. Where is the bullying happening? Is it online? Is it at school? Is
Mm,
it at a sporting event? Who's involved with the bullying? What's your child's temperament? Are they like, yeah, mom, let's get this guy? Or are they more, please don't do anything because it'll get worse? So you have
mm,
to put all those pieces together first before you had to decide how to respond to it. But the one consistent thing that I tell my kids and all of my patients in my practice, because unfortunately bullying comes up a lot.
yeah.
The one thing I tell everybody is the bullying is not about you. The person that is bullying you is struggling somewhere. Maybe they don't feel good about themselves. Maybe their parents are in the middle of a nasty divorce. Regardless of the situation, the bullying is not okay, but it's not really about you.
Mm,
And then the other thing that I tell people, and this is really challenging for those older school age teenagers because friend groups socially become so insanely important.
they do.
But the point I try to drive home is that the most important relationship you will ever have is the relationship that you have with yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate. My kids go to an excellent school. They have SEL or social emotional learning built into their daily curriculum. We haven't had to deal with a lot of bullies in our home, but I know a lot of kids that have.
Yeah.
And the response from the child and the parent is going to vary depending on the specific situation.
And so do you think for parents too, it's how to navigate that? For example, say it is a child of somebody you know, or even a friend of yours. So I have
Mhm.
a very good friend. When our kids were little, they were two peas in a pod. We did everything together. She was also a single mom. When they got into middle school, you could not find two more opposite kids who ran in opposite groups.
Mhm.
And not that either one of them was doing things that were bad. They just went in completely different directions. And there was turmoil there. And we were able to navigate that as moms. We were great friends. We still did a lot together, but we did not try to force the kids to do things together the
Yeah.
same way as they did when they were young. We would take them to their other friends or whatever, things like that.
Mhm.
But when as a parent, you're trying to determine whether or not you speak to another parent in a situation. I'm
Mhm.
guessing maybe it's the same thing. What's going on in that parent's home? Is that somebody I know to be maybe receptive? Because I know
Mhm.
for me, if a parent came to me about something with my son,
Right.
I would absolutely, it would be kind of the same approach of, is my
Mhm.
son starting or instigating something? Is
Right.
he responding to something?
Right.
But not every parent's like that.
No.
So is it that same
No.
thing of I feel like this is a parent I could approach, or maybe it's a parent I can't approach? How do I help my son navigate, or my
Mhm.
daughter, in my
Yes.
case, it was a son,
Yeah.
navigate this difficult situation better
Right.
because maybe that door's not open? So is
Yeah.
it kind of the same?
Mm. Yeah.
Okay.
So when Mason was, I don't know, he was second or third grade. I was very close with his best friend's mom. Like we would together all the time, all the things. Well, this child had a habit of lying. And for like a week straight at aftercare, he would just dig into Mason. I don't remember what the comments were, but they were not kind. And after about a week, Mason had had enough and Mason hit him.
Mm-hmm.
Not okay. Again,
You don't start it.
start it, but in a sense, he was kind of finishing it. But regardless,
Yeah.
and my approach was just to cut contact.
Yeah.
I said, I just, because this was a woman that I know would not be receptive. In fact, after the incident, instead of calling me, her friend, she posted an insanely long Facebook post about how she didn't care if her kids were smart. She just wanted them to be like Jesus, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, this is it. If you can't even call me, but you
Mm-hmm.
can blast my kid on social media, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
So,
think that's a good point. In any area of life, whether it's kids, us as adults, right? If you can have the conversation, have the
yes.
conversation.
Yeah.
And if you can't, go ahead and exit stage left. You don't
Right.
have to announce it or force yourself into creating more turmoil or more
Mhm.
conflict
Right.
in trying to kindly step out the door, right?
Right.
And that's where I said, I think I have more discernment in my life earlier on in this episode, is that I'm okay with just walking away. And I didn't
Mhm.
used to be. I used to
Right.
feel like I deserve for my side to be heard.
Yeah.
And I don't anymore. I
Mm.
know, like you said, the most important relationship you'll have is with yourself. I know
Mhm.
within myself where I'm at, if I'm right or if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
And that's the most important thing for me. It's not worth all the other stuff sometimes. So I
Mhm.
love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm going to have you back on sometime because you've made
Yeah.
me think about so many other, and maybe next time, what I'll do is I will put it out there where we can get some questions from parents. If
Sure.
you could
Yeah.
ask a pediatrician anything, whether it's a medical thing or how to push when you feel like you're not getting the right answers, or how to navigate parenting, whatever the thing is, we can do more of kind of a Q&A and get the
Yeah.
audience's questions.
Yeah. That'd be
Okay.
fun.
So we'll definitely plan something like that.
Okay.
But one of the other, so I always have, my guests fill out a form. Give me some
Mhm.
idea. Tell me a little bit more about
Mhm.
yourself. Give me more of a feel for what. So I
Mhm.
always ask, tell me some questions anybody could ask you. And this was, I love all the questions you put. I've loved this conversation, but
Yeah.
this is the most unique question I've ever gotten. So, Kristen, tell us, what are the best pizza places near Chicago?
Oh, I am so glad you asked. I actually used to live in the subdivision across the street from one of them. It is not Giordano's. It is not Pizzeria Uno. It is a local mom and pop place called Kaiser's Pizza. They only have 2 locations, and it is the best pizza in the entire world. I've only been out of the country once, but I can venture to say it's the best pizza in the entire world. I'm
Okay.
giving you a Kaiser's Pizza. It's in Gurnee, Illinois, and their other location is Kenosha, Wisconsin. If you are anywhere near those cities, you have to go check it out.
All right. Well, I know I've got some business partners up your way one of these days. I haven't been to Chicago in years. I've been there a couple times for work, but I've got to get up that way
Yeah,
to connect with some different people. So
yeah.
we'll plan a meetup and you
Please.
you can introduce me to
Yes.
it.
And not only Kaiser's Pizza, but if you stay a couple of days, one of the best sushi places ever is located in our beautiful downtown. So we'll
Okay.
have to go there too.
All right.
You like lobster? You like
I
lobster?
I love I don't eat
Okay.
I don't eat liver.
Oh, no,
But other than
yeah.
that,
Yeah.
I'm open. Even if I
Okay.
haven't had it before, I'll try it.
Okay.
So, okay. So when I come, I'll have to plan my
Yeah.
meetings and
Yes.
then stay an extra night.
Yes.
So we can do pizza one night and do sushi the
Yeah.
next day. We'll do a little
Mhm.
food tour.
Yes, absolutely.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. Okay. So last thing, where can people find you? Well, first of all, tell us a little bit more about your book and then tell us,
Yeah.
I was going to do it the opposite way, but this makes more sense. Tell us a little bit more about your book, when people can find it and where
Mhm.
they're going to be able to find it. And then
Mm.
tell them where they can find you to get more information.
Sure. So, Parenting Redefined is officially launching November 13th, 2025, but it is available for pre order. And in fact, for anybody kind of interested in checking it out, I do have a free chapter available for download on my website, www.kristencookmd.com. So, I would love for you to check that out. That would be great. Parenting Redefined is the manual I wish I had before my
Mm,
kids were born. So, it teaches not only parents, but teachers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, anybody who's involved in the life of a child. It teaches them to parent the child that they have, not the one that they want.
mm.
And a lot of parents get confused. What do you mean? Of course, I'm parenting the child I have. Well, respectfully, if you've ever told your child to stop crying, you're not parenting the child that you have. If you ever forced your child to eat something that they didn't like, you're not parenting the child that you have. So, Parenting Redefined is all about teaching people neurocognitive development through the ages, psychosocial development through the ages. I talk about different types of parenting styles, the importance of understanding temperament. And then I also provide discipline strategies and talk about how punishment is not the same as discipline. And then give examples. And there's some really cool exercises throughout the book for people to do if they're interested. Um, I have some fun historical facts about parenting in there. So I'm really proud of this book. It is intended to be a reference. It is not intended to be
Mm.
a one and done. I want people to read what applies to their child at that particular stage of their life. And then as their child grows up, come back to the other sections.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
such an important tool. I could have
Yeah.
used that a million times over raising my son. So, okay, pre-orders. If you will send me the pre-order link, I'll make sure it's in the show notes. We'll get your website in
Awesome.
the show notes and also the
Thank
link to
you.
your podcast so
Okay.
people can find you. But Kristen is a wealth of knowledge. I have known you for probably 5-ish years
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And so many different kinds of conversations and things you've shared in different groups
Mhm.
that we've been in over the years. So I'm
Yeah.
extremely grateful to know you. That's why I felt like it was so important to have you talk to my audience, because if I were still raising a son in my home full time, or a child in my home full time, you are the person I would come to for
Oh,
advice and
thank you.
guidance to make
Thank
sure
you.
I'm plugged in the right areas in my community. So I encourage you guys, reach out to Kristen,
Mhm.
send her questions that you have, find out how you can
Yeah.
connect and get information from her.
Yeah.
And if you have questions about how to navigate anything in regards to working with your pediatrician for your child, she's an
Mhm.
incredible resource for that too.
Mhm.
So, final thing from me on this episode, of course, is Nat's hot take. We are coming into the fall, which means it's almost sweater weather. Actually, for me, that would be sweatshirt weather. I'm so excited. I restaged my closet, moved all the sweatshirts to the front. It'll probably be another month or so before I can wear them consistently here in Texas. But as it gets colder, we stay in a little more. So if you're looking for ways to spend time with your family, fun things to do, game night is a great way to go. It's one of the things when my son and his girlfriend come over, we usually have Sunday dinner and then we'll sit down and play card games at the table. But I came across this that made me laugh. Family game night is supposed to bring us closer together. But let's be honest, nothing reveals true colors faster than a game of Uno. Skipping your kid is one thing, but slapping that +4 on your spouse, that's a bold marriage move. That made me laugh because just last week we were playing Phase 10 Flip. So if you know Phase 10 Flip's a whole other ball game. I was getting spanked in this game. And as a parent, I did not ever let my son win a game. Never, because I wanted him to learn from me how to react when you lose. And I am going to be brutally honest. I am a sore loser as an adult. I was so mad this last Sunday night with that game. Anyway, I came back and I wasn't the biggest loser of the entire game, but man, don't slap that +4 on your mom either. She doesn't like it. Or don't flip the cards right when she's about ready to lay down her hand and go out. Not that
Mhm.
you know, but just don't do it, okay? So I want to thank you guys for being here with us today. If this conversation gave you hope or a new tool for your parenting journey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a friend who needs it. And parents, remember, protecting your money matters, but protecting your peace is priceless. Go ahead and subscribe to Chat with Nat for more conversations that count, and let's keep building families that thrive emotionally, financially, and beyond. Make sure you reach out to follow up with Kristen with any questions. Get a copy of her book. It sounds to me like it's perfect timing to get it as a stocking stuffer for all the parents in your life. So until next time, take care of yourself and don't forget to make room for joy.